Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to Wake Up, Look Up, a podcast where we connect events happening in real time to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm Zach Weihrauch, and in today's episode, we're asking the question, should I talk about my marriage? This is prompted by an advice column I read this week, where someone writing in was asking the columnist, when is it okay to talk to friends or family members about your spouse? Acknowledging the tension between privacy, which is pretty valuable in a marriage, and your spouse's reasonable expectation that the things that are meant to be private are staying private. And yet on the other hand, acknowledging there are times when you need an outside opinion, when you need advice on how to move forward in your marriage. How do you strike the balance between these things? This is a theme that I have seen come up over the course of not only my own marriage, but my career as a pastor. Over the 20 years I've been a pastor, this tension, seeing couples navigate it, so much so that when my wife and I teach premarital counseling or in the marriage class at our church, we always talk about this issue. And I want you to keep in mind that I think the most powerful verse about marriage in the Bible comes from the book of Genesis, where we're told that Adam and Eve, and then of course by extension, all married couples after, were naked and without shame. It's such a powerful description of the intimacy that is meant to be enjoyed in marriage, that it should be a space where you are able to be fully known and fully loved without fear of reprisal. So how do we get there while acknowledging there are times where we might need help? Well, before I give you some practical steps, let me first say that the one instance where you should always talk about your marriage is if there's abuse. If you're listening to this podcast and you are not safe in your marriage, skip past everything I say about intimacy and go tell someone, because that is a clear violation of the marriage covenant, and you need to find help as quickly as possible. But in less extreme situations, let me offer 3 pieces of practical advice, all coming from that reference in Genesis. First is intimacy is the goal of marriage, which means by and large, what happens in your marriage should stay in your marriage. Pretty hard to be vulnerable if I'm worried that my spouse is going to tell someone about the silly or stupid thing that I said, about the thing that I did, or about the fight that we had. If I fear that what's private will become public, eventually I'm not going to be myself in the context of marriage. I'm going to be the kind of sanitized version of myself that I take with me into public. So in the end, I'm going to end up wounding my marriage by changing how much Amy gets to experience the real Zach, or vice versa. The goal here should be to only do and say things that foster intimacy, never that harm it. The second thing I want you to say is that it might mean that sometimes the true pursuit of intimacy, in other words, I do fully know you, but I'm struggling with loving you, might require an outside voice or an outside opinion. It might mean talking to a friend or family member or even a therapist. But a quick rule of thumb is this: never talk to anyone else about your marriage without your spouse's permission. Because when I say to my spouse, hey, I'd like to talk about this with a friend, I'd like to get an outside perspective, I can't seem to get over this fight, I need some help. What I'm saying to them is, hey, our intimacy is really important, and I won't do anything that threatens that. So I'll only talk about this if you're okay with it. Therefore, even if they give me their approval to talk about that particular thing, what's implicitly being communicated is I'm not talking about anything that they haven't given me approval. I'm preserving privacy even as I seek help. And the third thing is this: we need to apologize and seek reconciliation for past harm. The reality is that if you haven't been careful about talking about your spouse with those around you, you've probably created a pretty negative opinion of your spouse in the people around you who don't really have a relationship with them and are dependent entirely on your perspective. That might mean going to those people and saying, hey, I have so many good things to tell you, or I never circled back and told you how we made up. It may mean apologizing to your spouse that the reason your mom or sister or brother or friend doesn't really like them is because you haven't been really careful about what you've said to them. Again, the goal here is not to have something to talk about, and it's not to build a coalition with those around us against our spouse. The goal is a marriage where we can be naked and without shame. Keep that in mind as you navigate these tough questions. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video. While you're here, we'd love to ask you to hit subscribe or to like so you get future content. If you listen to the audio version too, make sure you leave a review and a comment. That really helps. Consider sharing it on social media and helping us get the word out. And hey, while you're here, check out all the other content that Christ Community Chapel is putting out, including the videos that are around me right now.